on derivatives reform, we had Blanche Lincoln's amendment, which was going to be pretty strong, and says, hey, you know what? You can't do derivatives trading with taxpayer-backed funds. So you're putting money into a bank, and that's backed by the American taxpayers through FDIC, et cetera. Can't use that money to make these derivatives trades, which are much riskier. Makes a lot of sense. And it looked like that was going to be in the final version of the bill, because on Tuesday night at midnight, you couldn't add any more amendments to the bill. And right now there was no amendments that had a realistic chance of winning that were going to knock down Blanche Lincoln's amendment. Looks pretty good, right? Until 11:57 p.m. 3 minutes before the deadline, Chris Dodd, who is in charge of this reform project, had handed in a 5-page amendment with a handwritten signature on there that said, oh, by the way, we were kidding. No, there won't be any regulation of derivatives. We will postpone it for 2 years. And then I love this, but first of all, if you postpone it for 2 years, by that time the economy is going to crash anyway, right? But put that aside. Here's my favorite part. And at the end of 2 years, a council of regulators will decide if we're going to implement it or maybe not at all. And who's the head of those regulators? Tim Geithner. That's a good one. That's a good one. Other guys on the list are Ben Bernanke. In case you don't know, Geithner and Bernanke hate this rule. They lobbied against this rule. They tried to get it killed. The Obama administration, led by Geithner on this issue, tried to make sure it doesn't get included in the bill. Geithner, gee, I wonder which way he's going to go on that. Of course he's going to say at the end of his 2-year study, as that amendment says, it turns out it's not good for the economy or we're going to kill it. So in essence, this absolutely positively kills this Blanche Lincoln amendment if it passes. Now, it's just submitted for proposal, right? But if that weren't bad enough, at 11:59 p.m., Dodd puts in another amendment 1 minute before the deadline saying, oh, by the way, that Dorgan amendment that says that you can't do naked credit default swaps, which is just total side bets. You don't have any underlying assets. You're just betting on somebody else's assets, okay? It's the best amendment there is out there. Dodd's like, yeah, that one we're also going to study for 2 years, and that one Tim Geithner and Bernanke, et cetera, are also going to decide. They're well on the record as saying they hate that amendment, and they don't want it to pass under any circumstances. So they're both possibly killed by adding these amendments. Now, why does that show I was right, and that you might actually learn something from watching this show? Number one, I told you, they're not going to do these reforms. They're going to do reforms that, as the Washington Post article explains, that both sides, leadership on both sides, can agree to, right? The Republicans are never going to agree to real reform, and neither are the Democratic leadership, who are totally bought by the banks. They're not going to do the reform. Here, let me give you a sense of it. You know how much money the top 5 banks made from these swaps trades that would be controlled by the Blanche Lincoln Amendment, et cetera? They made $28 billion last year. You think they're going to give up $28 billion? You think in this system that the people will get to overrule them, even though we're in a democracy? Then you're hopelessly naive. No, we're going to lose on that count. That's what I told you. And people call me pessimistic. No, 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 no. I'm long-term optimistic. I really am. I'm an optimistic guy by nature. In the end, I think we're going to get them, okay? But in the short term, I have to be realistic with you. They're not going to pass. They're going to find every trick they can. But point number 2 is maybe even more important, because we dive into the issues and tell you why they do what they do. So why were they put in with 3 minutes left to the deadline? Why were these amendments put in? Because the game was, hey, Blanche Lincoln, who's been in the pocket of the banks this whole time, conservative Democrat from Arkansas, she'll get to say that she's doing the toughest amendment, the most progressive amendment, because she's got a progressive candidate running against her in the primary. And then after the primary is over, which was last night, then Chris Dodd goes, oh, yeah, did we mean that? No. Oh, we meant this. And then Blanche Lincoln will turn around and go, oh, I can't believe he did that. That is such a gosh darn shame. All right, what can I do? I guess I lost. And then the banks get their way, the establishment guys get reelected, and everybody's happy, except for the American taxpayer, right? Now, here comes, I read that in the morning, first thing I thought, Then later in the day, something changed, proving me even more right. You know what happened? Dodd withdrew that particular amendment. Why did he withdraw it? Just like I told you yesterday on the show. It's because Blanche Lincoln has to extend her primary by 3 weeks. See, I said that would be a huge win for us. I'm happier that her primary got extended than if Bill Holter won outright. Because if he had won outright or if he had lost outright, Blanche Lincoln would go, Chris Dodd twisted my arm. Oh, what could I do with that last second amendment? Okay, banks win. As it is, she's got to still fight because she still has a primary and an election in 3 weeks. So Dodd today comes out and says, yeah, I thought about that, and it's probably not a good idea. I'm withdrawing it. Now, you might be thinking right now, if you're following closely, hey, wait a minute, though, but that's a good thing. So they can't put in any more amendments, and we just killed the one that might kill the Blanche Lincoln amendment, so we're going to get the result we want, right? Wrong again, Bob. What Chris Dodd gets to do, because he's the head of that committee, is at any point put in a quote-unquote manager's amendment. So if Blanche Lincoln wins in 3 weeks, here, I'll lay it out as a marker for you guys. You see if I'm right or wrong, okay? If she wins in 3 weeks, or if she loses, because either way, they get to move on. Right before they take a vote on this, oh, look at that. Chris Dodd's going to be like, yeah, just, 3 minutes left. Manager's amendment. Yeah, go ahead. No, that doesn't apply. Get out of here. Okay, now, look, timing's on our side, though. That's the one advantage we have. Because they might vote on all this before 3 weeks is up. And if that's the case, then I don't know how they're going to finagle it, right? My guess is here comes the delays. They're going to have to delay for 3 weeks until Lincoln's primary is over, okay? Because they're not going to pass this. I wish to God they would, but they're not going to. Because, look, all of these amendments, if you actually tell the banks, hey, you know what, you can't do this kind of trading anymore, they're going to lose a tremendous amount of money. And the other thing we're going to find out is that they don't actually have the capital to back up these bets. That's pulling out a very important card from the house of cards that they've built. And the banks aren't going to let you pull that card because then the system caves in on itself. Now, it's going to cave in on itself no matter what. We're just delaying the inevitable as they take home more and more bonuses. But Geithner knows that. Bernanke knows that. They're not going to allow it. No way. So if I'm wrong, I'll be the first to admit it, and I will celebrate tremendously. But right now, it looks like it's the same old tricks to get the same guys reelected so they can give the same favors to the same banks. And, of course, the people who get screwed are also the same, the American taxpayers.